Good morning, James. You are live with Pastor Carl. What is your question?
There's scriptures that speak of our days being numbered, our times are within God, and it's appointed unto man once to die. And my question is in regard to a person engaging in activities which are not sinful but are viewed as risky. Can being involved in a risky activity have any effect on our appointed time? Or if God already knew the future and he knew you would be doing this activity before he determined your time, ultimately would it have any bearing on your appointed time?
Oh, yeah, that is a great question. And so from Psalm 139, it says, your eyes have seen my unformed substance, and in your book were all written the days that were ordained for me, when as yet there was not one of them. And so can we, in essence, influence or impact the number of our days? So on the one hand, God, because he's omniscient and he's all-knowing, he has determined the days for us. He knows precisely the day of our birth and the day of our death. But can we impact those days? Well, certainly take risky behavior. I have a friend who he used to fly gyrocopters, and I used to describe it like a lawn chair with a propeller above it, because that's what it looked like. And it was super risky. He even crashed once. And finally he realized, especially when he lost one of his close friends, and he was like an expert, but the close friend that he lost in a gyro accident was also an expert, like a national winner like he was. And he finally said, maybe I shouldn't do this. And I think he made a commitment to his wife that he would stop flying those things. So there can be risky behavior that's just stupid. On the other hand, there is behavior that isn't necessarily stupid, but is related to moral decisions that we've made. Think about King Hezekiah. God's going to discipline him for his disobedience. He's broken over it. He falls on his face before the Lord. He is truly repentant. And what does God say? I'll extend your days another 15 years. All right, so there, again, God in his sovereignty knew the day he was going to be born, the day he was going to die. Yet on the other hand, we are players in the whole process of what God's going to do. We're not robotic. It's not all fixed so that we have no part. There are some people, like in the Corinthian church, 1 Corinthians 11 and verse 30, and there Paul is talking about believers who went to the Lord's table, but in a less than respectable manner. And so he says, therefore, whoever eats the bread or drinks the cup of the Lord in an unworthy manner shall be guilty of the body and blood of the Lord. And Paul contextually defines an unworthy manner of participating in the elements with known, unconfessed, unrepented sin in your life. And so he said, but a man must examine himself, and in so doing, he is to eat the bread and drink the cup. He doesn't want you not to participate. He wants you to participate. He is to eat the bread and drink the cup. Just don't do it in an unworthy fashion. For he who eats and drinks judgment. Now, the Old English says, some of the translations say condemnation or damnation, but that had a slightly different nuance. It could have a dual nuance, kind of like the word trial and temptation. James, in the book of 1, when you encounter various temptations, and as it reads in the King James, and then it says a few verses later, no one is ever tempted by God, or in the King James it says, God tempted Abraham. Wait a minute, God doesn't tempt anyone. But they are assuming that people are smart enough in the 17th century to figure out contextually what's in view, because actually in Greek it's the same word in both instances, but context determines it. And so in later English editions, we would distinguish between a trial and a temptation, so to speak, and we translate it differently. They just assumed you could figure it out from the context, and you ought to be able to. But I'm saying that word damnation had a dual nuance, and so people have taken 1 Corinthians 11:29 as a warning to lost people at the Lord's Supper, though the Lord's Supper is for saved people, but they've used it as a warning to lost people. why they shouldn't participate in the Lord's Supper. Well, listen, the warning is not to lost people, it's to save people. And because saved people partook of the elements in an unhealthy manner, they didn't judge the body rightly. For this reason, many among you are weak and sick, and a number sleep. The word sleep here is metaphorical for death. A number of you have died. But if we judged ourselves rightly, getting back to your question, James, we would not be judged. But when we are judged, we are disciplined by the Lord so that we will not be condemned along with the world. And so, again, there's some play that we have in determining the days of our life. God knows it in advance, but sometimes because of risky behavior, sinful behavior, and other things, we cut short the days that God would have preferred for us to have had. He has them written in his book because he knows what we're going to do, just like God knows who's going to receive Christ, but that doesn't change your free will.
Dr. Carl Broggi answers your questions about the Bible and living the Christian life Tuesday mornings at 11 on The Light 88.7 FM and online around the world at wagp.net.